So let's talk about performing a customer analysis on your way to developing a marketing plan or market opportunity analysis. A couple of quotes. First by Peter Drucker. Marketing is so basic it cannot be considered a separate function. It is the whole business seen from the view of its final result. That is, the customer's point of view. Jack Shabrowski, if you know your customers, you know your business. And then finally, a little song from The King and I. Getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to like you, and getting to hope you like me. And this really is the bottom line for doing a customer analysis. Getting to know your customers. Some ways to learn about your customers: spend time around them. Most large corporations don't do this, but smaller companies do this all the time. And this was something that Sam Walton was famous for when he ran Walmart. He would go from store to store and just sit around and not tell anybody who he was, but just listen to what customers had to say and what they thought of the store and the service and the products. Another way to get to know your customers and learn about them is to look at the internal data that you have. That internal data will tell you lots of things about your customers in terms of their spending patterns and their repeat business and all of those important aspects of learning about your customers. You could survey them. And a lot of people still survey their customers, either online surveys, post-purchase surveys, or just annual surveys. And the other way that you can learn about your customers is you can use secondary data. And of course, that secondary data is data that other people have collected to learn about customers in your line of business. Getting to know your customers? Well, you'd like to know, who are your customers? You'd like to know some demographic aspects of them. And if you're a business-to-business firm, you'd like to know something about the firmographics or the information about the firms that you are dealing with. From a demographic standpoint, typically we'd like to know something about gender, age, income, education, and ethnicity. We also might want to delve into socioeconomic factors, personality factors, and maybe even lifestyles to learn more and more about your customers. Other things you'd like to know when you're getting to know your customers: how many customers are there? Usually this is done by gathering secondary data, either from MRI or perhaps the census data. And when we talk about census data, it could be everything from national data down to individual census tract data. You might also, besides secondary data, look at your internal records to figure out how many customers you have. And then you might also do some forecasting or estimating the size of your customer base using either aggregating or disaggregating methods. Now, I'm sure that you've discussed all of those things in your Principles of Marketing classes, but it is important for us to go back and remind ourselves that there are lots of ways to get to understand who our customers are and how many of them we have. Other things we might want to know about our customers: we might want to know something about their attitudes, their beliefs, their perceptions, the criteria that they use to select one product from another, and the importance weights of those criteria. That is, which of those criteria are the most important. We'd like to know why they buy. That is, the focal behaviors that prompt the purchases of products. So that we would like to know when it is that they make these purchases and why they are making these purchases. What problems are they trying to solve? What needs and wants are they trying to satisfy? You might want to find out what they buy, the amount of their purchases, how loyal they are, and usage situations. You also might want to identify where they buy, either online or perhaps in traditional brick and mortar stores in person. Two terms here that I'm sure you're familiar with. One is called showrooming. This is the practice of examining merchandise in a bricks and mortar store and then ordering it or buying it online. The opposite of that is something called web rooming, and that's the practice of examining merchandise online and then buying it at a traditional brick and mortar retail store. We might want to find out when people buy. And I have a little note here about the airline ticket story. And the way the airline ticket story goes is that there is a day of the week when airlines make their major adjustments to their ticketing policies. And so this is the day on which and I'm not sure, remember which day it is. It's a Wednesday or it's a Thursday or it's a Tuesday, when the airlines make the big shift in their ticket prices for the week. And then in some cases they raise their ticket prices, and in other cases they lower their ticket prices. Other things about when you might buy. Maybe you buy on payday, the day that you get paid. Maybe you go grocery shopping at that point in time. Maybe you buy things weekly, or you buy things in bulk and store them at home yourself. Or perhaps you use a just-in-time method, which of course means you don't really buy anything until you need it. So that is, maybe you go to the grocery store almost every day to buy what you're going to make for dinner that evening. And then of course we have what we call the after midnight group, which is a group of people who tend to buy their goods and services online late in the evening. Now, when I first moved out to Las Vegas, virtually everything was open 24 hours a day. And so we used to sometimes go grocery shopping after midnight. Getting to know your customers, you also probably want to know how they choose and how important are each of the mix variables. To understand how they choose, you probably need to know something about their attitudes and their habits. You need to understand the criteria that they use to select one alternative from another and how important each of those criteria are. And then you might also want to identify the situational factors that might influence how they choose. So for instance, perhaps buying a bottle of wine to consume at home yourself and for your family might be different than how you choose when you are going to give that bottle of wine away as a gift to someone that you are going to visit. So, what do we really need to know about customers to be able to perform a customer analysis as part of the situation analysis? Well, let's go through these relatively quickly. We'd like to know who are the firm's customers, the demographics, firmographics, perhaps even segments. We'd like to know why did they select a particular product? What are the benefits sought? Once again, perhaps segments. How many customers are there? And what are the mix elements that are the most critical? We also might want to know things like, how do they gather information and what media do they consume? That is, what percentage of the time do they spend online? Are they Facebook users, or perhaps they are Twitter users, or perhaps they spend an hour a day or so watching YouTube videos or on TikTok. So we also want to understand a little bit about how they consume media. We also would perhaps like to know why they select a particular product, and how many customers there are, and which mix elements are the most critical. So in summary, it takes time and effort to learn about your customers, and even more time if you really want to get to know them. But firms that are able to do this are much more likely to be successful over time. And learning about your customers, getting to know the company's customers, is a critical aspect of performing the situation analysis for marketing plans and market opportunity analyses.